Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. We start off our conversations in South Africa. A South African Airways plane carrying more than 100 people, including South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's Presidential Protection Unit and journalists, were detained, or the plane rather was detained for 26 hours at the Warsaw Chopin Airport in Poland. The security personnel were due to join President Ramaphosa on his peace mission to Ukraine and Russia as South Africa starts to feel the wrath of ongoing geopolitics in Northern Europe. Now, according to news reports, the flight which left the country on Thursday was flagged by aviation authorities after it failed to get clearance to fly over Italian airspace to reach Ramaphosa in Russia. All right, now joining us to discuss this further is international relations expert, Professor Jan Venter. Good morning, Professor. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
All right. This, some people might describe as unusual, but I want to get your thoughts on what might be happening here. We understand the side that Poland has taken in the Russia-Ukraine war. If it maybe was Belarus, we'll probably have a different conversation. But we understand Poland's side, with this whole conflict. But would you say that that might be what's playing out here? The failure of South Africa to also take a side is what might be affecting this drama we're seeing.
I think that South Africa is actually clearly seen as taking the part of Russia in this conflict. And I think this and the fact that South Africa, according to some sources, did not have the right documents and the right planning, played a huge part in the Poles' decision not to let the extended security accompanying the president out of the plane and to delay the plane, and also the equipment that was carried by the security was, according to my sources, was not declared sufficiently. So that was actually kept on the plane for various reasons.
So it's not, I mean, if you take away the political angle to this, we can also agree that the South African, the plane and of course the authorities didn't do the right thing, with paperwork.
Yes, it seems like there's various uncertainties regarding the flight. It was delayed in South Africa, and then outside Italian airspace, the flight was also delayed. It had to circle for a while outside Italian airspace. And then when it landed in Poland, it was delayed on tarmac. So there's a lot of uncertainty regarding the whole planning of this mission. And the Poles' argument is also that the various equipment on the plane wasn't listed. So it's not only the personnel that they objected to, but it's also the equipment that was brought with that was objected to.
Yeah.
So, but nonetheless, it's still a diplomatic.
Yeah, Professor, and that's what I was just about to get into. So, because if we take away the the paperwork that is being discussed here, diplomatically, is there a way that this could have been sorted? So it doesn't become all so dramatic, and they didn't have to be there for 26 hours in the plane. Is there a diplomatic way that this could have been sorted?
I think that if both parties were on a better footing and there were better channels of communication, this problem could have been alleviated much easier, much sooner, much better. It was confrontational rather than a feeling of mutual, let's help each other out. And now we had a confrontation on the tarmac. And that was a diplomatic error rather than something of diplomatic triumph.
Yeah. What then, do we expect that there will be more of, these type of incidents? Of course, as the conversations concerning the Russia-Ukraine war continue, we know, of course, the relationship with South Africa and Russia, and of course with BRICS. We also understand, where Poland, lands. So do we expect that there would be more incidents like this to seemingly bully South Africa?
Unfortunately, the era of easy politics, I think, is ending. We are entering a new era of, as Russia, as Vladimir Putin likes to put it, as a multipolar world. But it's actually going to be a bipolar world where we have the Eastern political power bloc led by Russia and China. And South Africa is allied through BRICS to Russia and China. And lots of countries are allied to the Eastern power bloc as they don't want to be allied to the Western power bloc. They prefer the Eastern non-colonial heritage. And there's going to be various pressures applied. People want countries to decide on which side they want to be. They want countries to say, I am openly on this side or that side. And that is what we call bipolarity. That is the two power phenomenon that we are entering into again. And South Africa will experience that pressure in future.
Yeah, as expected. And of course, like you've mentioned, the type of conflicts that we're getting into now, we currently are in, a lot different than what they were decades ago, and now you must take a side. If you do not take a side, then you are bullied. But funny enough, it's just one side that bullies you if you don't take a side. The other side doesn't really, put that much pressure on you. But I also want to, get your thoughts on the conflict itself, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, from your perspective. How much longer do you think we're going to be having these discussions, and do you think we're going to wrap up 2023 still hearing about the war in Ukraine?
Wars, unfortunately, are only decided when someone feels real pressure, when someone really starts losing. And both Russia and Ukraine at this moment feel that they stand a really good chance of winning. So they feel that their opportunities lie on the military field. So they are not really open to negotiation. They are open to recruiting allies, but not really open to getting down to the negotiating table. And before that happens, before they're not sitting seriously around the negotiating table, the war will not end. So we're seeing the military phase of the conflict. We're seeing Ukraine at the moment with its counteroffensive, and Russia with its offensive to counter that counteroffensive. And the real contentious issue of the, the land, who's going to keep what part of the land, is not being mentioned at the moment. Ukraine wants Russia out, and Russia wants to keep what it has. So nobody is discussing that. And
Yeah.
before that starts to happen,
Yeah,
there's no hope.
Yeah, there's also, I mean, that might be one, part of it. There's also the influence of NATO. Of course, where analysts have said that Ukraine really doesn't have much of a say in the length of this war. It's really dependent on how, long NATO wants to, or the U.S. wants to keep the war going. If you remember, early in 2022, there were moves made by President Zelensky to negotiate and avoid this war. But it said that Boris Johnson and a few others, had intervened and ensured that there was no negotiation in order to keep the war going. I've heard or seen some of that, in the past. But I want to talk about mediation. African leaders have also stepped in. I saw that story sometime last week to try to mediate in this crisis. Do you think that their voices would be relevant in any way, shape, or form, seeing the influence of the United States here?
I think that the African voice is very relevant. I think we presented a plan for peace, but that's just one of the messages that we conveyed. The first message that we conveyed was that Africa is concerned, and Africa is actually also a victim of this war through food insecurity. And that is a very important message. So we made our case that we are also part of this war indirectly. And that's very important.
All right.
Secondly, sorry.
You go ahead. You can wrap up. You can just wrap up. Go ahead.
Okay. Secondly, we made certain, especially South Africa, spoke to Putin about the BRICS summit. And that's something that isn't widely publicized, but we'll see what the BRICS summit coming up, how that looks, and if Putin will be coming to South Africa.
Okay. All right, Professor, thank you very much for your time this morning. We, of course, would follow up and see where this, how this turns out. What we are preaching here is peace, and, that there's better mediation and an end to the conflict. No Russian or Ukrainian deserves to be murdered, because of these interests. Thanks for your time. We'll speak with you again.
Thank you very much.